morning, almost afternoon.
Yeah. Hi, Oliver.
Yeah, how have you been?
I've been great. Great Christmas season and spent some great time with my family and now looking forward to this upcoming session and just 2025.
Where is it you live anyway?
I live in Cedar Falls.
Okay.
Yep.
And you have a lot of family there?
Yeah. I got 3 kids, 11 grandkids, and so they're at our house a lot. So
Wow.
they're a lot of fun.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a big family.
Yeah, it is.
How old are your kids?
My kids are, um, oh, that's a tough question.
It's
So my
not a
oldest.
good dad question,
Yeah,
is it?
no. Well, I can think about it because my oldest son is 20 years younger than me. So my wife and I got married young and had kids young. And so I'm 63, so he's 43. And then my daughter's 41, I believe. And then I have another son who is 33. He's 33, 34, so in there.
So they're all grown up. Do they live
No.
close?
Yep. Well, I have one daughter. My daughter lives in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
But the 2 boys are here in town and we see their kids a lot. So yeah, Grandma and Grandpa have an in-town acreage that they spend a lot of time at our house, and so it's a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah. So you used to be a legislator.
Yep, yep. I had a really, kind of discursive type of a career. Really, I used to be a quality control director at an oil company, and then I went into youth ministry, and then I went into politics, and then now I'm work for an organization called Inspired Life that works on educational freedom for parents. So enjoyed my time in the legislature. I was the chair of education towards the end of that, and really my passion is educational freedom, school choice. Really introduced one of the original school choice bills in the Iowa House, and ran into some roadblocks there. And then when Governor Reynolds really got involved in some of the primaries in 2020, that was the year, right, that she got involved in all those. Yeah, that kind of changed the landscape, I think, in the Republican caucus and made it possible to get some really good school choice initiatives passed, especially the ESA bill.
Yeah, I think that there were maybe 8 legislators who voted against your bill,
Yep.
against school choice, and she primaried or helped in the primaries of every one of them and turned that over.
Yep.
I think that was pretty important to her and to the House and the Senate.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And that's how we met. I met you at a Liberty Champions meeting. You were giving a PowerPoint and a presentation on how important school choice was.
Yeah.
And you also talked about Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage.
Yeah. Yeah. And our mutual friend, Samantha Fett, was at that meeting too. And her and I talk a lot about that meeting, and we call it the Catalyst meeting because Dan Gelbaugh was at that meeting. Jen Turner was at that meeting. You were at that meeting. Several other people who have gone on to really influence the political dynamic and just educational freedom in Iowa were at that meeting. And I had no idea that.
That's amazing. I didn't know Dan was there.
Yeah.
And he was on the school board in Waukee, and now he's a legislator and making a big difference. Jen Turner is running Moms for Liberty.
Yep.
Samantha, I just interviewed her Friday. She is a representative now.
Yep.
She's on the school board.
That started.
That's wild.
That started the relationship with Samantha and I, and and then got involved with she actually came on board Inspired Life as our ambassador director, and now she's our marketing director. And so obviously I've encouraged her to be part of the legislature and helped her along, and that's just been fun. She's going to be great. If anybody that knows Samantha knows she is a leader. She is a inspired and really has the thoughts and minds of Iowans and parents in how she legislates. And so
she is going to be an incredible force for good on that committee, being vice chair of the education committee. That's amazing.
Yep.
So you've made an impact.
Well, I guess I've had the opportunity to do that. I met a guy. There's a guy that's been around the legislature for a long time, and I was at the family leader event last year, and he introduced me to a friend of his, and he said, "Hey, you got to meet this guy. He is the most influential person in Iowa politics that you'll never know." I'm like, I'm fine with that. If God gives me the opportunity to influence, I don't care if I'm known or not. So,
Well, there's twice that you've had an incredible impact on me, and the first was at the Liberty Champions meeting, and I went home and I downloaded that book and listened to it while mowing the lawn. And then I ordered it and read it and highlighted and underlined it. And I've read 6 books since. But so that was a big impact on me. And then and led me to be an advocate for children in Iowa and to, lobby for the bill that prohibited those surgeries in minors.
yep.
And then we were sitting in the chambers in the viewing area. And you said, Oliver, you need to be up here full time. And I said, well, how am I going to pay my bills? And you said, well, you need to get good at asking for money. So I've worked on that.
Yeah.
I've worked on that a little bit, but it's definitely, I've stayed in the fight partly because of those little conversations, that make a difference.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, all of us who are in this fight need to work together and, just trying to keep inspiring people to use their God-given talents for this whole mission. And so,
Speaking of inspiration, what is Inspired Life?
Inspired Life is an organization that we are trying to shape culture. I want to make sure I get my mission statement right, because I always say it wrong.
Take your time.
Yeah, but we are shaping culture so that children can freely live for Christ. That's our mission statement. And so we believe, this kind of launches me into a discussion about culture and politics and education. And so if somebody wants a really quick idea of what we're doing, we're trying to put, at least in the political side of what we're doing, we're trying to put parents back in charge of education. And so Inspired Life, to get back to what we're doing, we are shaping culture, and we do it in 3 ways. We do it through biblical inspiration. Our executive director, Tim Butker, leads that, and he's got a family of political background. His mother was a state senator, Nancy Butker, and so he's also a minister, and so he ministers in the biblical inspiration part of our work. And then we have an arena that is in education, and it's education innovation, and Rebecca Johnson is our education innovation director. And so in that arena, we're just trying to improve education across the board for all students, and inspire people who might want to start a new school in any way. Because of the new ESA law, there's opportunities that people could start new schools. So that's what Rebecca's in charge of. And then I'm in charge of our political influence arena. And so we are trying to just influence legislators and anybody in political influence to be positive in the arena of education and be positive in the strategy of allowing parents to be in charge. And so that's what we're about.
That's amazing. What are your priorities this session? What do you see the great positive change being? I mean, with a 67 seat Republican majority and, some great people on the education committee.
Yeah. Oh, so there's a lot of good things. And before I get into that, let me get back to our overall
Okay.
idea is you've heard of the term that actually Andrew Breitbart, I think, coined it first, or one of the first people who said that politics is downstream from culture. Have you ever heard that one?
I have not, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you've been in it, you've seen it. I mean, our culture gets, is influenced by different things. And then the politics, really, who we elect is a result of what our culture is. And so I used to believe that education was downstream from politics, but I think I had that wrong. I believe actually education is upstream from culture. And so, really God instituted the family, parents and the family, to be the educators of their children. If you go back to lots of biblical references, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way they should go, really is the responsibility of parents to train up their child. And so really up until, the 19th, 20th centuries, we were doing that as a culture. Culture was really, parents were educating their kids. Well, in the 20th century, you follow the history of the 20th century at all, there was this incremental process that education, instead of being having parents in charge, education became the product of a secular government system. And it really was culminated in the early 1960s when they took the Bible out of school. And so that's what happened. Instead of having family and church really leading the way for educating our kids, we have a secular government system now doing that. And after 50, 60 years of that, we see the results, of a secular government system running things. Specifically, what you talked about, what Abigail Schreier lifted up, just this gender ideology that really is still taught in a lot of our public schools. And so, and what we believe is there are still a lot of great people in public school. My wife taught in public schools for 31 years. And so my daughter is a para-educator in public schools. My grandkids still go to public school. So we believe if we lift up the whole educational system, rising tide lifts all boats, that the public school will become better also. I firmly believe that about school choice. And so what we're trying to do is get parents and family back in charge of education of the kids, which then influences our culture in a positive way, which then will influence our politics. And so that's kind of our overall strategy. And so it's incremental. It takes a long time to do that, but school choices was a big boulder of the strategy influences that we're talking about. And so when that happened, that opened up really some good possibilities for us to help parents become in charge of their kids' education and enhance educational freedom. So to get back to the original question, number one thing that we want to do is probably expand possibilities for parents, expand educational freedom for parents. When the school choice bill was passed, if you recall, one of the big pushbacks from the left, from the Democrats was, well, there's not enough rural schools, right? There's not enough rural schools. So why would we even do this? Not enough rural, private school options. Well, so we believe that, one of the things that we could do is open up more options for rural parents to have school choice. And so that's one of the things we want to do is get through some legislation that allows for potentially micro-schooling or micropods, that type of stuff, to educate kids across the country. If you've done any study or research of micro-schooling and micropods, and it's really just, homeschool parents or parents coming together and doing a small school setting, kind of the one-room schoolhouse type of an atmosphere. They're very successful, and kids get educated very well that way. So
I think that really increased during the COVID lockdowns.
Yep, for sure. And the parents were doing that without obviously any financial help. They were just doing that on their own. And
yeah, my sister-in-law lives in San Diego, and I know they got together with a group of other like-minded parents and hired a teacher, and one of their garages turned into a classroom.
Yes.
During COVID when they were locking everybody down.
And while, a lot of people on the left are going to be against things like that. Research shows that kids coming out of those types of systems and programs actually do pretty well.
Right.
And the biggest accountability factor for teaching kids is parents having the power, parents having the power of where their kids go to school and the power of the purse strings, where the money goes. That's the biggest accountability factor for making sure kids get educated well. The left is going to come back and say, oh, there's no accountability in ESAs, no accountability in private schools. And I says, yes, there is. It's actually the best accountability is parents having the ability to take their kid wherever they want.
Yes. And I know that some homeschool parents don't want to have access to the ESAs because some of their fear of the accountability, not accountability, but
their
potential overreach.
Yep. They're a fear of the government strings attached. And I just say, okay, that's fine. Then you don't have to take the ESA. I mean, don't.
Right. Exactly. So let me ask you real quick, backtracking a little bit. What was the shift? Do you think from, you talked about how parents were really involved in their kids' education. Where did that change and how did that change?
I think you hit on it a little bit ago. I think it was COVID.
Yeah.
COVID highlighted what was happening in the classroom, and parents saw through their Zoom meetings and kids getting online through their computers. They saw exactly what was happening in the school. And
right.
I just woke up a lot of parents. I mean, going back to that, the Catalyst meeting where people were at, the Moms for Liberty group was formed, I think, right around then. And, they just took off because they were moms that wanted to see what was happening with education and take control of education of their kids.
What was the first shift from parental involvement to secular education by the government?
Well, I think, if you go back again to the 20th century, I think the biggest thing that took place was, and I already highlighted it, was, when the Supreme Court took Bible and praying, essentially, you can still pray, but out of the public school.
Right.
And when that happened, we were basically saying, again, this is a secular government bureaucracy that is now in charge of educating our kids. And I think it was, still pretty successful because there's still good people in the public school. And because of good teachers, I think the system chugged along pretty well until the left, probably, overplayed their hand, and the teacher unions, basically became the controllers of the educational system, and the teacher unions are far left, and they started instituting all of these things about rewriting history of our country, the CRT, the gender ideology stuff, all of that agenda, social emotional learning. If you know anything about social emotional learning, that's basically morality.
Yeah, we wrote a couple articles on that.
Right.
It seemed like that really escalated during COVID.
Right.
Especially when they took advantage of some of the funding and said, "Hey, now we have an epidemic or a pandemic of emotional issues that we have to address."
And here's what's funny about the whole thing. We had a system, chugging along, and all of a sudden we took morality out of it. We legislated morality out of this system. And then 20 years, 30 years of that, we figured, gosh, these kids are growing up in an immoral system. We should probably put morality back in. And we did that with this system called SEL, social emotional learning. So they may have had good intentions, like we got to institute some morality back with these kids, but whose morality was it? Well, it was a secular, godless morality.
Yes, and you had Castle pushing it through groups like Second Step and Learning for Justice and all those things. And
all of those things maybe had good intentions, but you really can't. I just think you can't teach morality without teaching God. You
That's
know,
difficult.
be a good person. Okay, well, why should I be a good person? You know, the survival of the fittest says it's me and I'm the most important thing. Unless God comes along and says, no, you're not. I'm the most important thing.
Right.
And to teach morality without God is pretty hard, just like you said.
It's difficult. And
Yeah.
so we come back to this, this reawakening of parents during COVID, Moms for Liberty, all these groups, Iowans for Freedom.
Yep.
Um, and
they realized, oh, they're teaching a morality that doesn't align with my morality.
right.
And that's how it took off. So
Lots of division in the CRT and DEI. DEI should be called division, exclusion, and indoctrination.
yes. Yeah. And again, there's definitely people on the left who knew what they were doing. But I think most people are like, oh, they're just trying to teach kids how to be good. Well, again, how can you do that?
Well, the challenge is you have people like Isaac Gottsman, who wrote The Critical Turn in Education. He was high up in education at Iowa State, and I picked that up. $40 I wish I wouldn't have spent on Amazon, but I had to read their playbook, and he just blatantly says, this is what we need to teach. We need to teach CRT and queer theory and all these different theories. And he was celebrated for it, and won all sorts of awards, and they were putting that in the education system at Iowa State.
Yep. So to get back to where we're heading again, I think we are working towards educating our kids where parents are in control of that, and so I just don't believe that if you really are a country of 350 million and you designed a system to educate kids, you wouldn't come up with the system we currently have. And so
what has been the huge decline that we've had? Talking to Samantha, I think she said that, we used to be very high ranked in education, and now we're ranked like 31st or something out of the states. And what has been, how are we going to get back to being on top and really educating our kids?
Yeah. Well, again, I when we took parents out of the equation and parents felt like I don't have any control anymore, what's the incentive? And so, obviously affluent families and affluent kids are going to do well. It's the under-resourced families that I worry about. And so, we could probably get back to some of the causes of what you're talking about, and what you're asking is probably the breakdown of the family itself. When you have so many kids growing up in a family, one-parent family or whatever, you don't have enough, you don't have that support in those families to make education a priority, I guess. And so I'm not trying to say everybody's like that, but, overall, generally, I think I go back to that same premise that God instituted the mother and the father and the family to be this economical unit that runs our culture. And when you have that unit that is educating and loving and taking care of kids, that's the best unit that sets up educating them and sets up culture. So we got to get back to that.
We do, definitely. And there's been just such an attack on the family unit over this past decade.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, back to this session, what are some of the things that you hope to see move through the House and the Senate and get signed by our governor?
Yep. So I talked about, making more possibilities for rural areas for school choice. That's one of our initiatives. There are lots of schools out there that are different than the typical 5-day-a-week school, hybrid schools, and they do quite well. But with our current law, they have to be in the building 5 days a week, and other different ideas of how schools work. So we'd like to see some changes in the accreditation of some of these schools. I know there's a couple of schools in Des Moines. There's one up here in Cedar Falls that are a hybrid where the kids will be in the classroom for 3 days a week, and they'll be home doing stuff and also, doing their class work at home also with parents involved. And they do quite well. So why can't a school like that be accredited? That's one of our initiatives to get a broader range of accreditation of hybrid schools. Last year, not too many people know this, but there's a charter bill that increased funding for charter schools. The typical funding is the state cost per pupil, which is $7,800. But then people don't realize there's an additional funding called categorical funding, which is your teacher leadership, your teacher development, all of those things. These are added funding mechanisms that have been tacked onto the state cost per pupil over, the last 30 plus years. And so that's additional spending that we spend. The charter bill allowed the $7,800 plus some of those categorical funds go to charter students. So we're like, well, if charter students can get those extra funds, why couldn't an ESA? So that's an idea too. Like, let's expand the ESA beyond $7,800 and to also include some of the categorical funds. So again, that's giving more tools in the hands of parents. That's one of our ideas. So we also want to reduce, again, I talk about the accreditation. Sometimes it's a 2-year process to get accredited. I think we can maybe quicken that, make it easier to people who are starting brand new schools to get accredited. That's one of our ideas.
What about teacher accreditation? We always talk about how we have a shortage of educators, yet we have this difficult process. I mean, we have a lot of experts in certain fields that would be great teachers. How do we bridge that gap?
And, Skylar Wheeler, our friend Skylar, he's the education chair in the House, and he's done some things with that the past couple of years. But yes, Oliver, we can continue to work on that. Like you said, there are experts out in the field that, some of them are starting to maybe be retired or do something else, or maybe they could even teach a class, part-time, some of the expertise, but they don't have this coveted, teaching degree from one of the universities.
Right.
And so, yes, I think we could really increase some of those ideas of getting more teachers involved and not thinking inside the box of teacher accreditation, but thinking outside the box of let's get some of that expertise back into the classroom and some of those people who really want to do it. So,
right.
Sure. I've got a degree, but I don't have a teaching degree, but I'm pretty sure I could teach a government history class in a high school pretty well. Plus, I've got experience as a youth pastor. So I know kids and I know the elements of what to teach, but I don't have this coveted degree, so let's make it easier for people to, get a teaching certificate or whatever it takes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be a great. How do you feel about the new leadership coming in 2025, appointments, Trump's appointments, all those things? How do you think that's going to affect our education system and everything you're working on?
Well, I'm certainly am pleased with the election and the potential of what's happening. I'm very pleased with so far the appointments that have been suggested, and it seems like Trump is picking people who, like you said, are doers and not afraid to shake up the establishment. And if you've been in government, which I have, right or left, there's an establishment of people that want to protect their jobs. I'm just being honest about that. And these unelected bureaucrats at all levels, local and state and federal, maybe have too much power. And so it appears that Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are aware of this and want to change things up. I know Vivek pretty well. I actually was at a youth conference and spoke alongside him before he ever ran for president, and got to know him well then. And he just had some really good ideas about stuff. So
I got to spend a lot of time with him when he was out here campaigning.
yeah,
I was the co-chair for the Dallas County Central Committee, and we put on some events for him. And great
what I
guy,
liked about
great
him,
family.
just open and honest, and not afraid to answer any question. And so,
Incredibly intelligent and articulate.
yep. And so Donald Trump it appears that he's picked some good people. And yes, I mean, the big elephant in the room question is, are we going to get rid of the Department of Education? And my response to that is, I sure hope so. I mean, it's ironic, it was started during, I believe, the Jimmy Carter administration. And, ironic that he just passed away. And a lot of people are pointing out that was a good thing that he did. And I would say it probably was one of the bad things that he did. With good intentions. He thought maybe, a federal Department of Education would help things, but all it did is just, make a bunch of money available that, people tried to get and get all this money, but it really wasn't helping educate kids. And so,
And why wasn't it helping educate kids? Was it the strings attached?
oh yes, strings attached. The bureaucracy had just made the education bureaucracy even bigger, and that's one of my big negatives about bureaucracies and monopolies. I mean, our system is a monopoly, and it's a bureaucracy, the biggest bureaucracy probably on the face of the earth. I mean, every single state has this public school system that's run the same way. And I'm just not a big believer of big bureaucracies like that. And the ingenuity of parents, the ingenuity of, people taking it upon themselves to do things is just going to work better than a large bureaucratic mess like the Department of Education. So I'm excited that hopefully the federal government can save some dollars by getting rid of that bureaucracy and not have to tax the states so much,
For sure. So you think they'll just pass the money through to the states then, and there won't be all the hoops to jump through and the bureaucracy attached?
I would assume I would prefer that they just don't tax us in the first place. Like, they tax us, we send our money to Washington, D.C., and then they send it back into these block grants. I mean, why don't you just not tax us in the first place and let us, keep the money? So,
Yeah, that makes too much sense.
That just goes to, I think, your question before about what Trump is intending to do with government. I was kind of excited. I don't know if you know anything about my political career, but I first ran on a theme called smaller, smarter government. And just a simple idea, which is it's correct everywhere you look at it. And Ashley Hinson was obviously a co-worker with me in the legislature at the same time. And so I spoke about smaller, smarter government all the time. And just a couple of weeks ago, she texted me, and she's in a meeting with Vivek and I think Elon Musk and somebody else from Trump's administration. And it's just legislators out there in Washington, D.C., and the term smaller, smarter government came up. And she took a picture and she texted me, she's like, hey, smaller, smarter government, we're finally doing it at the federal level.
Maybe they need you on their committee.
Well, I'm not as smart as those guys to come up with all the ideas to make it. I can come up with a big general idea. Like,
Right.
we got to make government smaller and smarter. And
Yeah.
and it was just such a common sense theme that it still resonates. And, and so it seems like Vivek, Elon Musk, and those people out there are thinking that way too.
Yeah, it's great. I'm pretty excited about it. Doge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I hope and pray that it goes well.
Yeah. As far as appointments go, do you think that the majority of Trump's picks will be approved?
I think the majority will be. I mean, if you look at the majority, yes, simple majority. Um, it's kind of funny if you look at when the Democrats go through this. Democrats don't have a problem, voting for all of their presidential appointees, right? But for Republicans, for some reason, we have this, idea that we have to be picky. And, I still think the Republican Party is too influenced by what the media thinks about them. And, that's another aspect of establishment that influences politics too much. But
You definitely see that at the local level as well
yeah,
in Iowa. I mean, really the concern for the media attacks and the narrative.
yeah. I just think it's interesting because the narrative about Trump was he's this big divider and, he doesn't work well with people. And really the opposite is true. I mean, look at what he's done ever since he got elected. And he's bringing, RFK, who's a Democrat, and Tulsi Gabbard, who used to be a Democrat, and
Yeah.
all these independents. He's bringing all these smart people together to do what's best for the country. I firmly believe that the Trump haters in this era right now are going to look back at some of us and go, gosh, you guys were right.
And it's just the legacy media. They're not
Yeah.
they're not journalists anymore. They're activists for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And so everything they do is an attack on anything that the Republican Party does.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too bad. And it's good that they're failing and that there's this rise of alternative media and news that's coming up. But yeah, they've done nothing but attack Trump and like you said, I mean, somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, who used to be the vice chair of the DNC, is now on his team. And I don't know if you read her book For Love of Country.
I didn't.
Just amazing. She really, I mean, she's an insider and a whistleblower on the Democratic Party. That party it's got to reform somehow. Otherwise, it's just going to die.
Do you think it will? Do you think they're going to learn anything?
I don't know. It's this catering to the radical, the small radical element that they've done that's really destroyed them.
And it seems like they continue to do it. I mean, I don't know if you follow some of the Democrats in the Iowa political scene. I do, just to see what they're doing. And I don't think they're learning anything. They're doing this analysis of why they lost, and they aren't bringing up any of the issues. They're talking about structure, like, we got to have a better structure throughout the state and make sure we listen to everybody. And they're not even talking about these issues that were so outside of the norm of real Americans that they are so left. They don't even realize that they need to drop those issues. And
you can't, they vote in lockstep. It's my opponent, super nice guy, grandfatherly guy, really passes himself off as a moderate. He's been in for 3 terms. This is his 4th. But he voted against protecting our girls' bathrooms, against protecting girls' sports, against protecting our minors from these terrible surgeries, against, removing pornography from the schools. It's so I would have a lot of respect for him if he voted more real moderately on those things.
Right. But they all
unfortunately, even the most moderate Democrat in the Iowa House votes right along with all of them on the stuff that most normal Democrat voters aren't for.
Exactly. And I'm kind of flabbergasted about that issue. I mean, that issue is the one, the fact that a child can get a sex change operation, and in some cases without parents' consent, is beyond me. I mean, I can't wrap my arms around anybody who would think that is right.
And there's states where their DHS is removing kids from their parents' homes who don't affirm and assist them in their new identity.
And so
which is insane.
It's such a clear dividing line in that issue. And there's not a single Democrat in the Iowa legislature had enough courage to go, you know what, this this is wrong.
Yeah.
You go on.
No.
It's it just kind of blows me away.
It's really become a religion,
Yes.
a replacement. Anytime you can't stand against somebody, you have to completely buy in or you're ousted.
Yeah.
That's
I think how they get the moderates is they convince the moderates that it's such a small percentage of people that it's not, you don't have to worry about it.
right.
And I'm like, even if it's one person,
Yeah.
you should
Yeah.
worry about it. But it's a larger percentage than they think it is. And
It is.
the moderates just put their head in the sand and like, okay, I'll believe you. It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal.
And they completely turn it on its head with, the terminology that they use. They obfuscate the truth. That's a hard word. I shouldn't have tried to use it. The truth, by life-saving, gender-affirming care. It's completely the opposite. It's it's mutilating and gender denying.
Have you heard anything on the progress of like some of these lawsuits, like Chloe Cole and people like that?
I don't know. I know Laura Becker is also involved in a lawsuit. I'm not sure how they're progressing. It would be great if they won. I mean, these medical practitioners that are just going along with this, it's kind of like Nazi Germany. I mean, they're making money from it. They're going along with. I met a psychiatrist recently who said that he was a unicorn in that profession and that he didn't just affirm and assist.
Right.
So and if they try to call that conversion therapy, if the therapist actually does their job and tries to find the root cause of the issue and work on that, groups like One Iowa and Iowa Safe Schools, they try to call that conversion therapy, and they've convinced some cities to ban that in their cities.
Yeah. Waterloo was one of them.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, I don't understand. I can't wrap my arms around anybody who is in that camp, but
I can't either. It's crazy.
That's why we keep fighting, Oliver.
That's why we keep fighting. So what about these drones flying over New Jersey?
Oh,
what do you think about that? Isn't that crazy?
it is crazy.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, and I think a couple weeks ago, Trump came out and basically said, "Oh, they know. The military knows what it is. They just, for some reason, aren't telling anybody why." And
well, they've got the mayors saying, "Hey, what's going on here?"
yeah,
We've got these school bus sized drones or SUV sized drones flying over neighborhoods.
yeah. So it's at the point where it's undeniable that it's happening. So, yeah, I mean, you would hope that our government, whatever entity it is got they're thinking about our needs and care about us more than whatever their other reasoning is. So who knows? I'm not up on what's happening exactly, but I gotta trust that there isn't anything real nefarious going on. Let's hope.
I hope not. There's all sorts of crazy theories going around about what they might be doing, if they're looking for something, if they're, just.
It's just a strange period when right now, this lame duck period of Biden, but yet it feels like in one sense, Trump is almost, running things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's meeting with world leaders already and making plans.
Yeah. And it's kind of good and exciting in one sense, but then you fear what's Biden, and it's really not even Biden, it's probably his handlers, or what are they going to try and get in these last few weeks? I mean, they're already sending more billions of dollars to Ukraine and all that. And, are they going to pardon even more evil, nefarious people in the last week?
Who are some of the most nefarious that Biden has pardoned?
Yeah, I don't know any names. I read an article about, he's pardoned some pretty bad people in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Murderers, pedophiles, terrorists,
yep,
etc.
Yep.
and then
Why?
hired.
Why? Why would you? I don't get it. So,
Yeah, I don't know that he's doing any of it. He's been on vacation most of his
yeah,
term.
I kind of hope and look forward. Maybe someday there'll be a really investigative, either documentary or a real movie that shows really what happened in the Biden presidency. I mean, hopefully it comes out because yeah, I just don't think he was really in charge all along at all.
Right, right. Some say it was Obama's third term.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who
In
knows?
one sense, I look at the positive about it. I mean, in one sense, this because his presidency was so bad, it really sets up kind of an attitude in the country that people really want Trump in there to do some good things, and so it's almost the way it worked out. It almost gives Trump a better chance and possibility to do really good things his last 4 years. Whereas if he would have won 4 years ago, it might not have been as good of a second term. And
They
so,
would have fought him harder the whole way,
yeah,
and people might have been more on board with it. But now everybody's been stressed to the nth degree.
yep,
They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to pay their bills. Eggs are 5 times more expensive than they were. With your background in oil, how important is oil production in our housing costs and our food costs and all those things?
oh man, and I've actually talked with Vivek about this back in the day. But oil production can be one of the things that gets us even out of some of our debt. I mean, if we can get back to what Trump was doing in this first term, energy sufficiency and basically, you know, uh, getting all of our oil products production in the United States and not having to rely on other countries, that is going to be a huge development for our economy. And I think I hope and pray we can get back to that. I had a discussion early on in my career with a non churchgoer, somebody who really firmly believed in evolution, and I said to him, well, what do you think fossil fuels are? And just, oh, it's just an evolution of fossils, blah blah blah. And I said to him, I think fossil fuels are a gift from God. I mean, they're an energy source that really is a great energy source that is efficient and works well. And we have a lot of already mechanization in our country designed that way. And if we lean into it, I mean, there's still fossil fuel resources for who knows? I know it's well over 200-300 years, if not more than that, maybe eternally, who knows? But, it's just an efficient source of fuel. And I just don't buy into the fact that it's going to hurt our planet like the left does. And so I think if we embrace it, which it seems like Trump is, I think it could be something that will hopefully get us out of some of our economic woes.
I think so too, and we've got to bridge the gap between where we're at and where we want to be without just making all these mandates and trying to force technology down people's throats that aren't there yet. That isn't there yet. EV's not there yet. There's also nuclear energy that could be explored a little more.
Oh, for sure. Clean nuclear was a great source, and we could get back to that.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, or that you're working on that you're excited about before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about kind of our overall mission of getting parents back in charge, and the idea that educating our kids could hopefully change in the next 10 or 20 years to a system that puts parents, really the ones who are driving it. I think I may have talked about this in the past on your podcast, but the United States really is behind, I think, the rest of the world in the systems that we use to educate our kids. Like the Netherlands, for example, is a system there where there's 30 or 36 different types of schools with different ethos that parents can choose from, and they're all funded the same way. And so I think we got to get back to a system where all possibilities of educating kids are led by parents. Different religions and ethos are also utilized the way the ones that parents want to use, and the funding is the same way. There's really no reason why somebody in one school system should get 3 times the amount of funding than somebody else.
Give me an example. What are the different types of ethos that, or a few of them that they're doing in the Netherlands?
Some of them are faith-based, so Christian, or they even do different faiths, Muslim or whatever. In a free country, that's obviously something you can do. Some of them are more a gifted type of student, or some of them you could have a school that's just athletic based. There are athletes that want to participate in certain sports, but they also are getting the academics that they actually need, but they're focused on that. STEM, a school that's just focused on engineering and technology. You could have a school that does that, get your basics covered, but then focus on those types of things. Trade schools, get your basics covered in education, but you're also focused on different trades of welding or whatever, And so special needs schools. I've already got parents reaching out to us like, hey, we'd really like to start just a special needs school and get funding, ESA funding for that, And so what it really just does is open up the possibilities of ingenuity and inspiration of parents to come up with just specific schools that fit kids.
Rather than one type of school that all kids have to be forced to fit into.
Exactly. You said it right there. That's the dichotomy of what we're fighting against. Right now we have a system where one size fits all the kids have to come to us. Let's have a system where the kids and the parents decide, hey, we could have a school that does this, and it's specially designed for this type of kid and one for this type of kid, with this one caveat, which I believe is important. Make sure they all have a civic and patriotic understanding of what the United States is. That's what keeps us together as a country, is we are patriots to believe in our Bill of Rights and our Declaration and our Constitution. If we keep that as our common source of and common belief of all the schools, then we can keep together as a country and not be divided.
What do you think the pathway to achieving something like that is? Do you think it's realistic? It's a realistic goal. Do you think we could do it? Because it sounds very compelling, and every kid has different talents and different interests, and for them to, right now we see, and I talked about this at the doors. I knocked thousands of doors, and one of the things on my platform was bringing the trades back to our public schools. I mean, when I was a kid, we had a huge shop building, great trades programs. And as a home builder and being somebody who grew up in the trades, we have such a lacking of kids that want to be part of it. I mean, we have a hard time. My HVAC guy, my electrician, et cetera, they can't find young people that want to do those jobs. And they're great jobs, great careers. But we've somehow created this system of this, school to college pipeline. Kids are going to college, racking up $100,000 in debt, then can't get a job. So how do we get back to that more, or how can we create that? What's the pathway?
Yeah. Well, look at where we're at right now. We've started a system of school choice that if you have an accredited school, you get $7,800 to use to teach your child. Presently, the public school system is getting over $20,000 per kid per year. And so that's a discrepancy, and it's probably wasteful in a lot of ways. But we've had this system that is reliant on this, and all of our towns and all of our school boards and all of our athletic systems are all dependent on this one-size-fits-all system. So it's going to take a while to kind of break us out of the box, change the paradigm of what we're doing. And I think school choice was that thing that changed, was the biggest piece that changed that paradigm. And so my goal, and I'm not afraid to say this, is complete parity for funding. All schools have the same amount of funding, have equal funding. And it's going to take a while to get there. The biggest roadblock is property taxes. And because almost a third of all public school funding comes from local property taxes. And so how do you change that? So there's going to have to be an evolution where we take the local education dollars away from property taxes, and we put that all into one system, into the state costs. Presently, we have a 1 cent tax statewide. It's called SAVE, and those dollars go to the infrastructure and several other things for educating kids in the schools and the buildings. And then a lot of the other local property tax dollars go to buildings. We've got to change the paradigm of that money flow. Take the infrastructure dollars and the building dollars away from property taxes and get it to a system where we can distribute it statewide or school, it's different schools, and maybe do it in the same way it's done through an ESA. So we've got to shift the funding mechanisms of how they work to get us outside of this paradigm. And that's going to take a while.
That would certainly create more equal opportunity. That's for sure.
Yep. And that's the goal. And then if you can get equal opportunity for schools, then parents and innovators and people who are inspired to have different ethos schools will start doing it if they know that the mechanism is there for the funding.
Well, you paint a wonderful picture of what that could be like. I hope that we continue to move towards that.
Yeah. One step at a time. That's how government works.
1 step at a time. Well, thank you, Walt, so much. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom today and your expertise on education. And, continuing to do what you do and influence who you do and plant all those little seeds.
That's what we keep doing. That's what government influence is like, is planting. Well, that's really, life. We all got to plant seeds and see if it cultivates. So
for sure.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about it, and thank you for what you're doing and spreading the good news around.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. How can people reach you and find out about what you're doing?
Inspired Life. Our website is inspired-life.org, inspired-life.org. My email is walt@inspired-life.org. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much. God bless you. Thank you all for listening.
Take care.
Take care.